Hey, Norman with iSaveTractors. In this video, we're going to finish up our Simplicity 4040 Powermax Tractor by wiring it up and adding a few final touches. Let's go! Okay, before we get into wiring this Simplicity 4040 Powermax, I'd like to talk a little bit about the components that are used in this tractor, as well as some of the old wiring. This is the old wiring. They use these kind of plastic connectors like this. I'm not going to use any of these. Instead, I'm going to rewire it and use new nylon individual fittings like this. This, for example, is a nylon crimp terminal for a female spade. See if I can get it on the camera for you. And this is the male version. These two will plug into each other like that. That's how I'm going to make the connections as I rewire this tractor. These female spade connectors will also plug into each individual electrical component. This is an electric Pto switch that plugs in just like that. I'm going to use these kind of connectors instead of the 40-plus-year-old hard plastic ones, and that's just my personal preference. Now, let me talk to you about the electrical components that are in this tractor. So, I have opted to omit all of the safeties for this Powermax tractor. The Pto switches themselves are kind of a safety. We'll talk about that in a second. But I won't be using the old neutral start safety switch or seat switch if it had it. Instead, these are the components I'm going to keep around. These are the electric Pto switches. This is a simple on-off switch for the headlights. This is a new key switch. This is a voltmeter, and then these are the two warning lights. One warning light is for your transmission oil temperature, and one is for your engine oil pressure. Now, when we use these components, it is important to test them beforehand to make sure everything is working all right still. To test these, you would want to use a digital multimeter, and the setting that comes in really handy is the continuity setting, which is right here. It almost looks like a sideways Wi-Fi symbol. What that does is every time there is an electrical connection, this meter will give off a tone. So this is how I can test to make sure all of the components are still good. Here, we'll start off with a simple test with this simple on and off switch. So when this switch is in the off position, there's no electrical connection. When I turn it to the on position, these two terminals connect so power can pass through it. So to use the multimeter to test it, you have the multimeter set to continuity. I have alligator leads attached to each of the terminals. I'll put one alligator lead on one of the connections here on the switch and one on the other. So it's not giving off a tone because it's in the off position. But when I click it on, it gives off a tone. Turn it off, no tone. So I know this switch is still good, so I can reuse it. Let's test another one. Now these electric Pto switches, you'll see there are 4 terminals on the back side. So what this switch does is it connects 2 of the terminals to a circuit each time this switch is in a position. So when it's in the off position, these 2 terminals make a connection, and when it's in the on position, these 2 terminals make a connection, and these ones no longer make a connection. The reason for this is so you can run the start circuit through the Pto switch as well as the Pto circuit. So when these switches are on, it will not allow you to start your tractor. It disconnects the starting circuit, which leads to your solenoid. And when it's off, that's the only time these will make a connection. Let me show you what I mean. So with the switch in the off position, these make a connection. When it's in the so this tone represents the starting circuit. So the wires that will ultimately lead to your solenoid have to go through these 2 terminals. So when I turn the switch on, this circuit is no longer live. So if you turn off your machine and you leave your Pto on, next time you start it, this will be disconnected, and therefore you won't be able to start your tractor until you move the Pto in the off position. Now, conversely, if I were to put the test probes on the other terminals, this right here is the circuit that would energize your PTO clutch when it's in the on position. So when I flick this on, it is now making contact and it will pass current through it. So this PTO switch works. Voltmeter is pretty simple. You hook this up to a 12 volt to your 12 volt battery and then the other side to ground. You want to connect this typically to the B terminal of your ignition switch, or actually you'd want to connect it to the accessory or ignition circuit of your key switch. That way when you turn your key to the off position, this will not read voltage, and when you have your key in the on position, this will read voltage. These are important. I like voltmeters over ammeters because this gives you a little bit more useful information. When my tractor's running, if this is pinging in the between the 12 and 14 volt range, it means my charging system's good, it means my battery's good, so this is very helpful. Now these warning lights here, the way these work is these are connected to a sensor, and when the sensor reaches its predetermined value, for example, the transmission oil temperature in the Powermax, when the temperature gets to a certain temperature, the sensor is going to connect itself to ground, which will allow current to pass through this light, and then this light will come on. Now to test this to make sure it works, I can do the same thing with my continuity function, clip it to each terminal, and it should immediately give off a tone, just like that. So this warning light works. So that's kind of an overview. I won't go over the key switch. Key switch is pretty simple. It's a rotary switch. When you turn your key, it connects different terminals here, and each terminal is marked. We sell these at iSaveTractors.com. This is the particular one with the 9/16 inch mounting hole. Now, these are the components. To make things easier for you, I'm going to display a wiring diagram I made for this tractor on the screen now. Check it out. Well, that concludes the Simplicity 4040 project. This project was a lot of fun. It brought a lot of unexpected challenges, but I worked through all of them, and here we are with this great running tractor. I'm going to put it to work on our 8-acre homestead farm here in southern Maine. Hey, don't forget, iSaveTractors is sponsored by iSaveTractors.com. We are the leading developers of aftermarket parts for your old vintage small engines, like the Onan CCK engine that runs this tractor. We also develop parts primarily for the Kohler K series, KT Twin series, Magnum series, Tecumseh, the Briggs and Stratton cast iron engines. If you need parts for your old small engines and your old small tractors, please look us up, iSaveTractors.com. My name is Norman. Thanks for joining me for this rebuild project, and I'll see you next time.